We have all decided you don't live here anymore." My mother said it calmly, too calmly, like she was announcing a change in dinner plans instead of erasing a life. I remember the exact moment the words landed, how my brain stalled, how my body reacted before my mind could catch up. My hand tightened instinctively around my phone, already turning toward the front door. Because my daughter was still outside. She was 7 years old, sitting on the front steps with her backpack beside her, swinging her legs and humming to herself. She thought we were staying for dinner. She thought this was still her grandmother's house. She thought adults didn't do things like this. "Mom," I said slowly, "my child is outside." My mother didn't look past me. She didn't flinch. She just crossed her arms and repeated it, as if clarity came from firmness. "We've talked," she said. "Your father agrees. Your sister agrees. This arrangement isn't working anymore." Arrangement. Like my daughter and I were a temporary inconvenience they'd finally voted to remove. My name is Lauren Hayes. I was 34, a medical billing specialist, divorced, doing everything I could to rebuild after my ex left, with more apologies than child support. My parents had offered their home as a short-term solution while I saved for a place of my own. Short-term had turned into 8 months. 8 months of rules that changed weekly. 8 months of my daughter tiptoeing around moods she didn't understand. 8 months of me reminding myself this wasn't permanent. I just didn't realize it would end like this. "You can't do this," I said, my voice steady in a way that surprised even me. "You can't tell us to leave like this, at night, with no warning." My sister, standing behind my mother, avoided my eyes. She always did when things got ugly. Silence was her way of voting, yes. "We didn't want to make a scene," my mother replied. "It's better this way." Better. For who? I turned toward the door again, my heart hammering. "I'm getting my daughter." "Lauren," my mother warned, "don't make this harder than it needs to be." I paused. Something in her tone, sharp, rehearsed, final, made something inside me go still. This wasn't a threat spoken in frustration. This was a decision already executed. They'd waited until my daughter stepped outside so they wouldn't have to say it in front of her. I stepped past her without another word. The porch light cast a soft yellow glow over my daughter as she looked up and smiled. "Are we eating now?" I swallowed. "Sweetheart," I said, forcing my voice to stay gentle, "we're going to go somewhere else tonight." She frowned. "Why?" I glanced back at the doorway. My mother stood there, arms folded, unmoving. My father remained unseen, his usual position when cruelty required plausible deniability. "Because plans changed," I said. My daughter stood, slinging her backpack over one shoulder. She didn't argue, she trusted me. That trust was the only thing holding me together. As I reached for her hand, I felt it. The shift. The moment something fundamental snapped into place. Not panic, not despair, resolve. They thought they were pushing us out quietly. They thought this would end with embarrassment and silence. What they didn't understand was that this wasn't the end of something temporary. This was the beginning of consequences they hadn't planned for. The door closed behind us without a sound. No slam, no argument. Just the soft click of finality. I walked my daughter to the car with my shoulders squared and my head high, refusing to let my hands shake where she could see them. The night air was cool, the kind that sneaks under your clothes and makes everything feel sharper. She climbed into the back seat and buckled herself in, humming again like nothing was wrong. That almost broke me. As I started the engine, the porch light stayed on. No one came out, no one waved, no one said goodbye. They had already moved on. "Mom?" my daughter asked as we pulled away. "Did I do something bad?" The question hit me harder than anything my mother had said. I tightened my grip on the steering wheel. "No, never. This isn't because of you." Then why can't we stay? I searched for words that wouldn't teach her the wrong lesson about love, about family, about her own worth. Sometimes, I said slowly, grown-ups make choices that aren't kind, and when they do, it's our job to keep ourselves safe. She nodded, absorbing it with the quiet seriousness only children have. Okay. I drove until the house disappeared in the rearview mirror. Only then did I let myself breathe. We spent the night in a cheap motel off the highway, the kind with buzzing lights and thin walls. I carried our overnight bag in one hand and held my daughter's hand in the other, repeating to myself that this was temporary. Inside the room, she jumped onto the bed and laughed. "It's like a sleepover," I smiled for her, turned on the TV, let cartoons fill the space where my thoughts were screaming. When she finally fell asleep, curled around her backpack like it was a shield, I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the wall. That's when it hit me. This hadn't been a fight. It hadn't been a heat-of-the-moment reaction. They had waited. They waited until my daughter stepped outside, until it was dark, until I had nowhere immediate to go. They called it a decision, but it was an eviction. I pulled out my phone and scrolled back through messages, texts from my mother about boundaries, comments from my sister about stress, reminders that I should be grateful for a roof that could be taken away the moment I stopped being convenient. I realized something sitting there in that motel room, listening to my daughter's steady breathing. If they could do this to us once, they would do it again. And if I went back begging for stability, I'd be teaching my daughter that love was conditional, that safety could be revoked by committee. That was a lesson I refused to pass down. I didn't cry. I didn't call anyone. I opened my laptop instead, because walking away with dignity is one thing, but ensuring they never had the power to do this to us again, that required action. And for the first time since the door closed behind us, I wasn't afraid. I was focused. By morning, I had a plan, not a dramatic one, not a reckless one, just a clear-eyed understanding of what had to happen next. I woke my daughter gently, helped her get dressed in the motel bathroom, and made sure she ate the granola bar she liked best before we left. She didn't complain. She didn't ask questions. She trusted me to know what to do. That trust became my anchor. I dropped her off at school like nothing had changed, smiling at the front desk staff who didn't know we'd slept somewhere else the night before. I waited until her classroom door closed behind her before I let my shoulders sag for just a second. Then I got back in the car and started making calls. Not emotional ones, practical ones. A coworker who'd once mentioned an opening at her apartment complex. A legal aid clinic I'd saved months ago, just in case. My bank, to move the small savings I'd been building into an account my parents had never known about. Each call felt like reclaiming a piece of ground I hadn't realized I'd given up. The hardest call came last, my mother. I didn't expect an apology. I didn't even expect kindness. I just needed clarity. "What happens to our things?" I asked when she answered. She sighed, already tired of me. "We packed what we could. You can pick it up this weekend." Packed, as if they were doing me a favor. "And my daughter?" I asked quietly. "Do you want to speak to her?" There was a pause. Not a long one, just long enough to tell me everything. "It's probably best if we take some space," she said. Space. From a 7-year-old. I hung up without another word. That was the moment something inside me hardened. Not into anger, but into certainty. They hadn't just rejected me. They had decided my child was expendable collateral. That decision would cost them. By the end of the week, things were moving faster than I'd expected. The apartment came through, small but clean, ours. The legal clinic confirmed what I'd suspected. The way my parents had forced us out crossed several lines they hadn't considered. Nothing dramatic yet, but leverage I could use if I needed to, and I might. When I went to collect our things, my sister wasn't there. My father stayed in the garage. My mother supervised from the doorway, like a landlord watching a former tenant. My daughter stayed close to me, her small hand gripping my jacket. "Why is Grandma mad?" she whispered. I knelt in front of her. "She's not mad at you. She just doesn't know how to love the right way." My mother scoffed. "You're filling her head with nonsense." I stood slowly, met her eyes. "No," I said, "I'm protecting her from it." She didn't respond, because for the first time, she couldn't. We left with what mattered. The rest stayed behind. Furniture, decorations, the illusion that this house had ever been a home for us. As we drove away, my daughter looked out the window and asked, "Are we going to be okay?" I smiled, not the kind I'd forced before, but a real one. "Yes," I said. "We are." Because the truth they never understood was this. They thought throwing us out would teach me a lesson. What it actually did was remove the last reason I had to stay quiet. We moved into the apartment on a Tuesday. No ceremony, no help. Just the two of us carrying boxes up one flight of stairs that smelled like fresh paint and new beginnings. My daughter ran from room to room, claiming corners like she was mapping a future instead of recovering from a loss. "This one can be my reading spot," she said, pointing to a patch of sunlight by the window. I nodded. "It's perfect." And it was, because it was ours. That night, after she fell asleep on a mattress still wrapped in plastic, I sat on the floor with my back against the wall and let the quiet settle in. Not the heavy quiet of being shut out, but the steady kind that comes from knowing no one can pull the ground out from under you anymore. My phone buzzed once. A message from my mother. "We didn't mean for it to go this far. You're being dramatic. You can come back when you're ready to apologize." I stared at the screen, surprised by how little it stirred in me. There was nothing to apologize for. So I didn't respond. Weeks passed. My parents told people their version of the story, that I left in a huff, that I was unstable, that I'd taken my daughter away out of spite. A few relatives reached out, probing for cracks they could report back. I gave them none. Because the truth was simpler and stronger than any narrative they could spin. They had chosen comfort over compassion, control over care, silence over safety. And I had chosen differently. The final contact came a month later. My father left a voicemail. His voice was clipped, formal, unfamiliar. "This has gone far enough," he said. "Your mother is taking this hard. You're hurting the family." I listened to it once. Then I deleted it. Not out of anger, but because I finally understood something that took me years to learn. Being someone's daughter did not obligate me to sacrifice being someone's mother. I blocked their numbers that night. My daughter stopped asking about them slowly, the way children let go when adults make it clear who will show up. She stopped looking at the door when it rang, stopped wondering if she'd done something wrong. One evening, months later, she looked up at me from her homework and said, "Mom?" "Yes." "I like our house better." I smiled. "Me too." And in that moment, I knew I'd done the right thing. Not because I'd won, not because they'd lost, but because I'd drawn a line that protected the only person who mattered. They thought they were removing us. What they actually did was give me the clarity to remove myself. The door they closed behind us never reopened. And for the first time in my life, that felt like freedom.